Book 1, Chapter 4, The Secret War. Skulduggery Pleasant took his gun away and walked out of the hall. He peered into the night, satisfied that there were no human fireballs looking around. He came back inside and picked the door off the floor, grunting with the effort. He maneuvered it back to where it belonged, leaving it leaning in the doorway. Then he shrugged and came back to the living room, where Stephanie was still standing and staring at him. "Sorry about the door," he said. Stephanie stared. "I'll pay to get it fixed." Stephanie stared. "It's still a good door, you know. Sturdy." When he realized that Stephanie was in no condition to do anything but stare, he shrugged again and took off his coat, folded it neatly, and draped it over the back of a chair. He went to the broken window and started picking up the shards of glass. Now that he didn't have his coat on, Stephanie could truly appreciate how thin he really was. His suit, well tailored though it was, hung off him, giving it a shapeless quality. She watched him collect the broken glass and saw a flash of bone between his shirt sleeve and glove. He stood up, looking at her. "Where should I put all this glass?" "I don't know," Stephanie said in a quiet voice. "You're a skeleton." "I am indeed," he said. "Gordon used to keep a trash can out back. Shall I put it in that?" Stephanie nodded. "Yes, okay," she said simply, and watched Skulduggery carry the armful of glass shards out the room. All her life she had longed for something else, for something to take her out of the humdrum world she knew, and now that it looked like it might actually be happening, she didn't have a clue what to do. Questions were tripping over themselves in her head, each one vying to be the one to ask first. So many of them. Skulduggery came back in, and she asked the first question. "Did you find it all right?" "I did, yes. It was where he always kept it." "Okay, then." If questions were people, she thought they'd all be staring at her now in disbelief. She struggled to form coherent thoughts. "Did you tell him your name?" Skulduggery was asking. "What?" "Your name. Did you tell him?" No. Good. You know something's true name, you have power over it. But even a given name, even Stephanie, will have enough to do it." "To do what?" "To give him some influence over you. To get you to do what he asked. If he had your name, and he knew what to do with it, sometimes that's all it takes. That's a scary thought, now isn't it?" "What's going on?" Stephanie asked. "Who is he? What did he want? Who are you?" "I'm me," Skulduggery said, picking up his hat and wig and placing them on the table. "As for him, I don't know who he was. Never seen him before in my life." "You shot him." "That's right." "And you threw fire at him." "Yes, I did." Stephanie's legs felt weak and her head felt light. "Mr. Pleasant, you're a skeleton." "Ah, yes, back to the crux of the thing. Yes, I am, as you say, a skeleton. Have been one for a few years now. Am I going mad?" "I hope not." "So you're real? You actually exist?" "Presumably." "You mean you're not sure if you exist or not?" I'm fairly certain. I could be wrong. I could be some ghastly hallucination of my own imagination." "You might be a figment of your own imagination. Stranger things have happened, and do, with alarming regularity." This is too weird. He put his gloved hands in his pockets and cocked his head. He had no eyeballs. So if he had, it was hard to tell if he was looking at her or not. "You know, I met your uncle under similar circumstances. Well, kind of similar, but he was drunk. And we were in a bar. And he vomited on my shoes." "Okay, so I suppose the actual circumstances aren't overly similar, but both events include a meeting, so... My point is, he was having some trouble, and I was there to lend a hand. And we became good friends after that. Good friends." His head tilted. "You look like you might faint." Stephanie nodded slowly. "I've never fainted before, but I think you might be right. Do you want me to catch you if you fall, or if you wouldn't mind?" "No problem at all, thank you." Stephanie gave a weak smile, and then darkness clouded her vision, and she felt herself falling, and the last thing she saw was Skulduggery Pleasant darting across the room towards her. Stephanie awoke on a couch with a blanket over her. The room was dark, lit by only 2 lamps in opposite corners. She looked over at the broken window, saw that it was now boarded up, and she heard a hammering from the hall. And when she felt strong enough to stand, she slowly rose and walked out the room. Skulduggery Pleasant was trying to hang the door back on his hinges. He had his shirt sleeve rolled up on his left forearm. "Ulna," she corrected herself, proving that her first-year biology class had not gone to waste. Or was it radius? Or both? She heard him mutter. Then he noticed her and nodded brightly. "Ah, you're up. You fixed the window?" "Well, covered it up. Gordon had a few pieces of timber out back, so I did what I could. Not having the same luck with the door, though. I find it much easier to blast them off than put them back on. How are you feeling?" "I'm okay," she said. "A cup of tea. That's what you need. Lots of sugar." He abandoned the door and guided her to the kitchen, where she sat at the table while he boiled the water. "Hungry?" he asked when he had it boiled, and she shook her head. "Milk?" She nodded. He added milk and spoonfuls of sugar, gave the tea a quick stir, and put the cup on the table in front of her. She took a sip. It was hot, but nice. "Thank you," she said. He gave a little shrug. It was hard discerning some of his meanings without a face to go by, but she took the shrug to mean think nothing of it. "Was that magic? With the fire and blasting the door?" "Yes, it was." She peered closer. "How can you talk?" "Sorry?" "How can you talk? You move your mouth when you speak, but you've got no tongue, you've got no lips, you've got no vocal cords. I mean, I know what skeletons look like. I've seen models and diagrams and stuff. The only things that hold them together are flesh and skin and ligaments, so why don't you just fall apart?" He gave another shrug, both shoulders this time. "Well, that's magic too." She looked at him. "Magic is pretty handy." "Yes, magic is." "And what about, nerve endings? Can you feel pain?" "I can, but that's not a bad thing. Pain lets you know if you're alive, after all." "And are you alive?" "Well, technically, no, but..." She peered into his empty eye sockets. "Do you have a brain?" He laughed. "No, I don't have a brain. I don't have any organs, but I have a consciousness." He started clearing away the sugar and the milk. "To be honest with you, it's not even my head." "What?" "It's not. They ran away with my skull. I won this one in a poker game." "It's not even yours. How does it feel?" It'll do until I finally get around getting my own head back." You look faintly disgusted. It doesn't feel weird. It'd be like wearing someone else's socks." "You get used to it." "What happened to you? Were you born like this?" "No, I was born perfectly normal. Skin, internal organs, the whole shebang. Even had a face. It wasn't too bad to look at if I don't say so myself." "So, what happened?" Skulduggery leaned against the counter, arms folded across his chest. "I got into magic. Back then, when I was, for want of a better term, alive, there were some pretty nasty people around. The world was seeing a darkness it might never have recovered from. It was a war, you see. A secret war, but war nonetheless. There was a sorcerer, malevolent, worse than any of the others. He had himself an army, and those of us who refused to follow in behind him found ourselves standing up against him. And we were winning. Eventually, after years of fighting our little war wars, we were actually winning. His support was crumbling, his influence was fading, and he was staring defeat into face. So he ordered one last desperate strike against all the leaders on our side." Stephanie stared at him, lost in his voice. "I went up against his right-hand man, who laid out a wickedly exquisite trap. I didn't expect a thing until it was too late. So I died. He killed me. The 23rd of October it was, and my heart stopped beating. Once I was dead, they stuck my body up on a pike and burned it for all to see. They used me as a warning. They used the bodies of all the leaders I killed as warnings, and to my utter horror, it worked." "What do you mean?" "The tide turned. Our side started losing ground. Malevolent got stronger, and as more than I could stand, so I came back." "You just came back?" "It's... When I died, I never moved on. Something was holding me here, making me watch. I had never heard of it happening before that, and I haven't heard of it happening since, but it happened to me. So when it got too much, I woke up, a bag of bones. Literally, they gather up my bones and put them in a bag and throw the bag into a river. So that was a marvelous new experience right there. Then what happened? I put myself back together, which was rather painful, and then climbed out the river and rejoined the fight. And in the end, we won. We finally won. So with Marvelly defeated, I quit the whole scene and stuck out on my own for the first time in a few hundred years." Stephanie blinked. "A few hundred?" "It was a long war." "That man, he called you detective?" "He obviously knows me by reputation," Skulduggery said, standing illustrator. "I solve mysteries now." "Really? Quite good at it, too." "So what, you're tracking down your head?" He looked at her. "If you had eyelids, you might well be blinking." "It'd be nice to have it back, sure, but so you don't need it, so you can rest in peace?" No, not really." "Why'd they take it? Was that another warning?" "Oh, no," Skulduggery said with a little laugh. "No, they didn't take it. I was sleeping, about 10 or 15 years ago, and these little goblin things ran up and nicked it right off my spinal column. Didn't notice it was gone till the first morning." Stephanie frowned. "You didn't feel that?" "Well, like I said, I was asleep. Meditating, I suppose you'd call it. I can't see, hear, or feel anything when I'm meditating. Have you tried it?" "No. It's very relaxing. I think you'd like it." "I'm sorry, I'm still stuck on you losing your head." "I didn't lose it," he said defensively. "It was stolen." She was feeling stronger now. She couldn't believe she had fainted. Fainted. It was such an old woman thing to do. She glanced up at Skulduggery. "You've had a very unusual life, haven't you?" "I suppose I have. Not over yet, though. Well, technically it is, but... Is there anything you miss?" "About what?" "About living. Compared to how long I've been like this, I was only technically alive for a blink of an eye. I I can't remember anything about having a beating heart in my chest and miss it. So, there's nothing you miss. I miss how it... and how it was there. On top of my head. I suppose I miss my hair. He took out his pocket watch and his head jerked back. Wow, look at the time. Go where? Things to do, I'm afraid. Number 1 is finding out why that nice gentleman was sent here. And number 2 is finding out who sent him. You can't leave me alone, she said, following him to the door. No, he corrected. I can. You'll be perfectly safe. The front door's off. Well, yes. You'll be perfectly safe as long as we don't go through the front door. As he turned, she snatched his hat away. You're taking my hat hostage? You're either staying here to make sure no one else attacks me, or you're taking me with you. Skulduggery froze. That wouldn't be too safe for you. Neither would being left here on my own. But you can hide, he said, gesturing around the room. There are so many good places to hide. I'm sure there are plenty of good solid wardrobes your size, even under a bed. You'd be surprised how many people don't check under beds these days. Mr. Pleasant, Skulduggery, please. Skulduggery, you saved my life tonight. If you're going to undo all that effort by leaving me here so someone else can just come along and kill me, that's a very defeatist attitude you've got right there. I was no fellow, a little older than you. You ought to join me in my adventures. Wanted to solve mysteries that regard belief. He kept asking, kept at me about it, and finally proved himself after a long time, and we became partners. And did you go on to have lots of exciting adventures? I did. He didn't. He died on our very first case together. Horrible death. Messy, too. Lots of flailing around. Well, I don't plan on dying anytime soon, and I have something he didn't, and that is your hat. Take you with me, or I will stand on it. She looked at him with his big hollow eye sockets and held out his hand for his hat. Don't say I didn't warn you.